Hey, DawgNation, I'm Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented today by Kroger. And what a day it is to be on the program. Great news last night. Five-star linebacker Mekhail Sherman made it official. He committed to the Georgia Bulldogs. We will talk a lot about that on today's show. I'm going to share a clip that Sherman recently said that I think is going to make Georgia fans like him even more. We'll talk to Jeff Sentell, his thoughts about the latest UJ edition, and, of course, we'll contrast that with the very bad news that Florida got. It is going to be a very fun show. I'm glad you're a part of it. As DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented by Kroger, starts right now.
Today's episode of DawgNation Daily is presented by Kroger. More ways to save fresh food, low prices at Kroger.
Presented by DawgNation.com. This is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Here's your host, Brandon Adams.
You know, it doesn't get much better than this. The worst possible news for Florida, at least in terms of an on-field situation yesterday, and then to be followed up with the best of possible news for Georgia with the commitment of five-star linebacker Mekhail Sherman, potentially setting the stage for what could be a very fun and busy next few weeks as some of these guys who've been thought to be leaning in Georgia's direction, maybe they do like Mekhail Sherman did and make it official. We'll talk to Jeff Sentell about all this a little bit later on today on DawgNation Daily, presented by Kroger. I want to talk for now, though, about Mekhail Sherman, kind of my own perspective on Sherman. There is something about Sherman that I think that Georgia fans are going to really like that really, to a certain extent, has nothing to do with football. Because, frankly, the thing that makes Sherman Sherman in my mind is something that not all five-star football players possess. In fact, a lot of them don't have this, we're going to be honest, because when you grow up hearing about how good you are and how athletically gifted you are, there's a way and probably a likelihood that you're going to believe a lot of your own press clippings. But the one thing that you see over and over again when it comes to Sherman is a certain level of humility, a certain level of comfort in his own skin, and not a guy that's necessarily all that obsessed with himself. And frankly, one of the funny things I think from Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger a couple of weeks ago here in the DawgNation video channels, was a conversation that he had with our buddy Jeff Sentell about the somewhat, I guess, surprising nature of the fame that he even has when he comes to a campus like the University of Georgia. This is all a little weird to him, and seemingly he's going to try as hard as he can not to be impacted too much by the stardom that's going to come his way, because let's face it, because of shows like this and websites like the world-famous DawgNation.com and others, Sherman's going to be a pretty popular name. A lot of Google searches for this young man last night. He's a pretty big deal right now, but none of this is going to his head. And in fact, as proof of that, right off the top of the program, I thought Sherman on his own Twitter feed last night had a very nice message, not just to Georgia fans, but all the fans who followed him for a while, because, as he alluded to, a lot of fans are not going to like the decision he made. Ohio State fans especially, they have a way of being pretty disappointed when players choose one school over theirs. And Sherman did choose Georgia over Ohio State, but nonetheless, to all the fans who peeked in on his recruitment, I thought that Sherman actually gave a pretty nice message to them. Take a look and then listen to this, and then we'll talk more about the young man.
How you doing? It's Mekhail Sherman here. I just want to say thank you for all the fans across the United States who offered me, colleges offered me, all the fans supported me. I just want to say thank you. It's not just about the two schools or just Georgia fans. It's everybody who supported me, everybody who kept me through my day, through this recruitment process. Y'all a lot. Y'all are fun. Y'all are supportive. Y'all comments are fun to read. Best believe that. But all in all, it's good to say that I'm a dog. Go Dogs.
You love that "Go Dogs" there at the end from Sherman. I think that's really fun to see. And clearly, he's a guy that's pretty well comfortable and pretty well at peace with the decision that he's made. And I kind of want to examine kind of how we got to this point more with Sherman making this official with his UGA commitment last night, and going back to some of the things that he said about some of this kind of stuff in the past is, I think, a pretty good clue of kind of how we got here. First of all, this is another example, and I love the Twitter exchange between Glenn Schumann and Dan Lanning last night, where Schumann was kind of talking about how relaxed and happy and proud Dan Lanning must be, and Lanning kind of gave a wink and a nod back in his direction. These guys are clearly killing it on the linebacker recruiting trail for Georgia right now, and Dan Lanning does deserve to take a bow on this, because Sherman, in his own words, has told Jeff Sentell not all that long ago that UGA staff, their ability to connect with him, was one of the things that he's liked about Georgia from the kind of the get-go. In fact, here is Sherman in his own words about that.
I feel really good about Georgia and Coach Dan Lanning. I really mess with the coaching staff as a whole. Nick Williams, Dan Lanning, Kirby Smart, everybody. Because when I went down there, it was a really great, warm welcome, to be honest.
Yeah, warm welcome is exactly what you want the Georgia staff to do to guys like this. And for whatever reason, that warm welcome to these linebackers has seemingly worked better, as well as any position that Georgia's been recruiting over the last couple of cycles. That's kind of a nice thing to think about. More from Mekhail Sherman here on in the pursuit by Ohio State, the pursuit by Maryland, a lot of these other programs have been kind of hot on his trail for a while. Why was it that Georgia was able to stand out during all of this? Sherman recently told Jeff Sintel. Here's more in his own words.
It stands out amongst one of my schools. They really show genuine love, and they really, a lot of schools want to tell you what you want to hear. They told me all the goods and bads about Georgia, but it was, the good always outweighed the bad.
So he says, listen, they kind of try to keep it as real as possible, but it was an easy thing for them to do because, as Sherman says, the good kind of outweighs the bad and all that. But keep that in mind. Those two clips in mind from him, that he felt the love from Dan Lanning. They made him feel at home, made him feel comfortable at UGA, and that Georgia had a way of kind of standing out during that process, because it sounds like in a different conversation that Jeff Sintel was able to have with five-star linebacker and now UGA commit Mekhail Sherman, when Sherman took his official visit on G-Day, that this might not have been the let's roll out the red carpet and wine and dine, proverbially speaking, the young man as a way of swaying him and getting his attention. It sounds like to Sherman that it wasn't about taking it up to the next level so much as it was about validating one more time the stuff that he'd always liked about Georgia to begin with. Here is Mekhail Sherman again.
The official visit was no different than the unofficial, which says a lot. The relationship-wise between me and the coaches it didn't change. They didn't love me more or love me less than they did on the unofficials, or show me more love or show me less love than they did on unofficials. It was the same thing. I got the same treatment I had when I went there. So it really did establish something. All it really did was strengthen bonds between me and the university. And that's all my other official visits going to be, really just strengthening bonds and strengthening relationships to see how they weigh out within my recruitment.
Kind of funny there that when Sherman said that, he said all my other official visits, but you kind of know how this goes. On Twitter a couple of weeks ago, Sherman essentially eliminated everyone but just Georgia and Ohio State, and that was a big clue for a lot of folks that Sherman might eventually end up as a part of the Dogs 2020 class, because there have been a lot of Ohio State writers for a while going on the record saying that people in Columbus did not feel great about Sherman's connection to Ohio State. At one point in time, he had a strong bond with Ohio State, but that had kind of subsided a bit, so that was a bit of a clue. And then everyone else, maybe LSU would have been one of those other schools that could have gotten an official visit. They eventually end up kind of outside the running on all this as well, and Sherman lands with the Dogs. Now, all of that is the story of how we get here today, and kind of take a look at who this young man is. And as I said off the top, there's an aspect of Sherman that I think makes him more attractive than kind of the typical five-star prospect, because in my mind, one of the things that Sherman seems to have is a level of humility that not all five-star guys kind of possess. You heard that in the short clip I played a little earlier of him thanking all the fans and the media types and the programs who had recruited him. But I want to kind of dig in a little deeper on that a little bit more. This is a clip you may have heard from Sherman. I'm pretty sure I probably played it at one point in time. But listen to the way that Sherman says he wants to be treated by the Georgia coaches. This is the thing about Sherman you're going to like the most, I think. The fact that Sherman is coming to Georgia for a reason, not because they're going to pat him on the back and love on him all the time and tell him how great he is every single day. No, Sherman actually wants to be great, not be told that he's great. He actually wants to be great, and he thinks that the Georgia coaches, as aggressive and tough as they can be, can push him in that direction. This is going to make you like the young man. Here he is talking about this very point.
Honestly, I'm not looking for nowhere to be a star. To be honest with you, like, being a star would be great, you know what I mean? I feel like I could be a star anywhere I go. However, I need someone that can actually crack down on me and just make my abilities being a DN and an outside linebacker the best that I can be. That type of thing. And plus, coaching is what's going to make me the better person. The better person, the better football player, because right now I'm still raw. I haven't really cracked nowhere yet. My potential is still up there. I still haven't reached it yet, so I need somewhere that can really push me to that limit.
So listen, I mean, how often do you hear a young man say, I want the coaches to crack down on me. I actually want them to push me to be the best I can possibly be. He says, I'm not looking to be a star. I actually want to grow through this process, and I'm going to use a word that he didn't use, kind of have this happen organically, not rush it too soon, but actually follow the steps in the process and actually become the kind of guy that I believe my full potential gives me the chance to be. I think that's kind of a unique perspective from Sherman. It's one of the reasons why it's not just good that Georgia has him, but it may be more likely that Sherman actually succeeds at the college level. And listen, over the course of our program, we are obviously going to contrast this to the very bad news that Florida got yesterday. Y'all know how I feel about stuff like this. In fact, I need to get Eddie on the desk here in a moment, because obviously Eddie's going to be loving all of this. That this is obviously a very bad day for Florida. They lose their top 2019 signee, Chris Steele. A very good day for Georgia. They gain a 5-star signee, or I should say a commitment for the 2020 class. I mean, that's as good as it gets when it comes to the week that is for the Georgia Bulldogs. As our buddy Connor Riley's going to help me out here, get all my props on the desk. Eddie and everything else. This is a big day for Eddie. Eddie was celebrating a lot last night, so he's a little slow getting on the desk today. Of course, our radio and our podcast audience can't see that, but Eddie's the unofficial mascot of DawgNation Daily, named in honor of Florida coach Dan Mullen, as the Dogs find themselves another nut on the recruiting trail, this time 5-star linebacker Mekhail Sherman. And the fact that Florida fans hate it make it all the sweeter for Georgia fans. My name is Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented today by Kroger. Good to have you with us live on video, 10 a.m., DawgNation Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. We're on the radio at noon on Athens Sports Radio 960 The Ref. And we are available as a podcast wherever you find them, including the world-famous DawgNation.com. Now, speaking of the world-famous DawgNation.com, make sure you go there right now. One of the things you can click in and find out more information on is how Kroger is helping you save getting ready for Mother's Day. Did you know right now you can earn 4 times the fuel points on gift cards? Perfect for your mom this Mother's Day. I'm talking about stuff like Bath & Body Works, Michael's, kind of everything in between. You can download the digital coupon from the Kroger app and start earning 4 times the fuel points on gift card purchases now, all the way through May 14th. It's just in time for Mother's Day. It's a great way to take care of the mother in your life, and a great way to earn yourself some fuel points as well. After all, moms like it when you save money and you do smart shopping, and Kroger gives you a chance to do that. And by the way, oftentimes my mother is checking in on DawgNation Daily, making sure I'm not getting myself in trouble. So if she is watching right now, I'll say a happy Mother's Day to you too, and looking forward to spending time with my mom here this weekend. All right, with that said here, let's go around the doghouse, presented today by Merriweather and Tharp. We'll get Jeff Sintel later on. We'll talk some UGA recruiting with him. But around the doghouse right now, and I kind of want to go back in time to something that I talked about a little bit yesterday. I want to give you some more on now. Kirby Smart was at the Regions Tradition Celebrity Pro-Am. That's the PGA Tour Champions event that takes place in Alabama each year. And the big sports radio station in Alabama is WJOX, and they were there, had a chance to interview Kirby Smart. I gave you a clip from this interview yesterday, and I wanted to give you a couple more things from Kirby from this WJOX interview, because actually, in some respects, credit to the host, they get a side of Kirby Smart unveiled here that we don't often get to see. I'll get to that in a moment. Let me start with something a little bit more typical for Kirby. He was asked about AL.com, predicting that Georgia was finally going to get over the hump and beat Alabama, and the answer that you get back from Kirby Smart on this is exactly the answer that you would expect. Here's Kirby responding to that question.
So Kirby, do you appreciate the pressure that comes with the job, what you've created for yourself? And the reason I bring this up, AL.com yesterday did 5 bold SEC football predictions. They've got you guys beating Alabama in the SEC championship.
Congratulations.
Here we go.
That's a big win for you.
Yeah.
But do you appreciate the pressure?
It's the only way we've been able to beat them so far. So. No, I don't get into the predictions. I think they sell. I think it's great for the media, and it's great for the offseason for everybody to talk about. But our predictions are we got to go practice, play good, and get a good football team, good product on the field. So that's what we're working on right now.
Yeah, listen, I think it's my job to worry about predictions. I think it's my job to worry about what people in the media are saying. And frankly, I love that kind of stuff. I like the back-and-forth trash talk between rivals. I like the hot takes, sure to be wrong. I like all that kind of stuff. But as we've seen from Dan Mullen, sometimes getting too wrapped up and maybe being a part of the media narrative or trying to create a media narrative makes you end up looking like a fool. Kirby Smart doesn't get involved in that kind of stuff at all, and frankly, I think Smart's tactic on this is the better way to go. Something else from Smart on the football end of things that I wanted you to hear, though, and I know this has been kind of a dead horse that I've beaten for a while, the fact that Georgia is set in future years to move the Georgia-Auburn rivalry out of November into October at the behest of Auburn. I've had a hard time understanding what Georgia is getting out of this deal. The WJOX guys in Alabama this week asked Kirby Smart about that directly, and based on another answer to this question from Kirby Smart, frankly, I'm still not quite sure what Georgia got out of this. Here is Kirby.
That's not for me to decide. It's for the SEC office to decide. I think they do a great job working on that. It may bring more bigger factor to the end of the season because the games will be, divisional towards the end. But I think they do a great job of managing that, the SEC office, and they do it way out ahead of time.
One of these days, I want to know more about this story because something about this still just doesn't quite add up to me. Why Georgia Auburn's about to move to October. We were told by university officials, administrators, Jerry Moorhead, the university president in particular, that they wouldn't be doing this if Kirby wasn't on board with that. But Kirby Smart was asked yesterday, hey, or this week he was asked about this, are you happy about this decision? He says, it's not for me to say. Well, if we were initially told that Kirby Smart liked it, then why doesn't he say, yeah, I'm thrilled about it, and here are all the reasons why? He kind of comes with kind of a half-hearted deal at the end there of maybe it's going to make the end of the season more fun because it's divisional games, but that's not a legitimate, substantial reason. Something about this is just kind of weird. One more from WJOX with Kirby Smart I wanted you to hear, and if you're familiar with the band Widespread Panic, apparently Kirby Smart's a little bit more of a music fan than I thought he was. Here is Kirby Smart talking about his, I guess, somewhat affinity for the band Widespread Panic. He was, after all, playing with a member of that band at the Celebrity Golf Tournament this week.
When you were at school at Georgia, did you go to any Widespread Panic concerts? You're playing with John Bell today.
Yeah, absolutely I did.
Lance said he didn't think you did.
No, I said you struck me more as a 38 special kind of guy.
I went to a show in Athens.
Right. Okay.
So it was in Athens.
I went
to one in Valdosta. So I had a couple friends that drugged me around to them, and I have to say I enjoyed them.
We got a really great mutual friend.
Yeah, we do.
That grew up. That is a huge Widespread Panic.
Like a 500 show guy.
Jeff Stone, and we.
Can you have a job and go to 500 shows?
Absolutely. Go to a show and you'll see. You'll meet a lot of guys that are staying at the Ritz-Carlton and going to Panic shows.
I mean, I would have never thought that Kirby Smart could have talked for 30, 45 seconds, however long that was, about Widespread Panic. But apparently Kirby, in his pre-coaching life, had a little bit more of a social life than maybe I kind of picture him having. I sort of picture him just drawing up defenses on a chalkboard 24 hours a day. But I guess you got to have a little personal life, and Kirby Smart certainly has one. Good stuff there from WJOX. Kirby Smart on with those guys this week. It's Around the Doghouse, presented by Merriweather and Tharp. And obviously divorce is a tough subject. And for you probably assumed it was never going to be part of your picture. But if it is, no doubt you're left with questions about your home and your financial future, about your children and kind of what's best for them. And those are very serious questions. And Merriweather and Tharp understands that as well, and they're going to try to help you get those answers. Common divorce questions, you can go to the website, Podcast Divorce Guides. They kind of got all that to help you. Plus, it's a free initial consultation to kind of start allowing you to develop that peace of mind that's going to be important throughout all this process. So please, make one of the best decisions you can ever make. If you're going through this situation, it is really important not to go through it alone, to get expert advice, the kind of advice you get from theatlantadivorceteam.com. Please go to that website, theatlantadivorceteam.com. Merriweather and Tharp bring Around the Doghouse to you here today on DawgNation Daily, presented by Kroger. All right, later on, we're going to dive a little deeper into, some fun stuff at the expense of the Florida Gators. But for now, let's talk some recruiting with Jeff Sintel.
From Athens and across the SEC or wherever the recruiting trail may lead, here's a DawgNation.com insider.
I want to say hello to Jeff Sintel here on this Friday, DawgNation Daily, presented by Kroger. And Jeff, you were all over this last night at DawgNation.com. I had a chance to talk about this a little bit myself, both last night on video, off the top of the program this morning. But a lot of folks want to hear more about what you have to say about this. Georgia gets itself a big one for the 2020 class. Five-star linebacker Mekhail Sherman makes his commitment to UGA official. He's no longer kind of one of those quiet leans anymore, the way that some people suspected he might be. No, he is on paper a member of this 2020 class. And I guess let me start open-ended. What do you think about this for the Dogs?
Wow. Let's see, Brandon, lots of things to talk about here. First of all, good morning to you, sir, and good morning to all of DawgNation. I'm sure everybody did some minor property damage around their homes last night after Mekhail Sherman. I started running some numbers, and I think maybe one of the big bullet points to start talking about here is Well, first of all, aside from the numbers, I think this is a clear public, outspoken leader for the 2020 class. This is a young man that's one of the most passionate players I've ever covered, spoken to, in probably, I guess now almost 20 years of doing this. I would say that Mr. Sherman, let's just look at the stats for something for him a little bit. I'm not talking about his 4.5 speed or his passionate recovery or how he prays for his opponents before games or only watches football games by watching the defenses and roots for the defenses on both sides of the ball. Let's look at a pure hard number. So if we start counting up things, you would have Mekhail Sherman in the 2020 class. You would have Nakobe Dean and Nolan Smith in the 2019 class. And then you would also add Brenton Cox and Adam Anderson in the 2018 class. So really, just in the last 3 recruiting cycles, Georgia has either secured a commitment or signed a quintet of 5 five-star linebackers for Kirby Smart and Dan Lanning's defense. And that, folks, is one of those stats that just make you take a second step back and say that's pretty good stuff.
Yeah, Jeff, when I was talking to Nate McBride the other day, when all reporters had a chance to meet with him, I kind of half seriously, half kiddingly said, how does it feel to be a linebacker at Georgia during a tenure in which this program is recruiting that position as well as anybody ever has? And that's not too much of an overstatement, is it? I mean, the number of programs who've recruited this position group, both inside and outside linebackers, as well as UGA has, that list can't be very long.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to overcook that information at all, Brandon. If I really wanted to spice it up with some sizzle, I could say I could add 4 more names. I could add Robert Deal. I could add Quay Walker. I could add Channing Tindall. These were other linebackers from any service who earned a 5-star rating. So really there's 9 guys that one national recruiting service in the program thought well enough to give a 5-star rating to. That's in the linebacker room at the University of Georgia. Of course, there's inside backers and outside backers. I think Mekhail Sherman can also play both inside and outside. He is a fierce and a very, very passionate young man when it comes to things. We just put up a story up on DawgNation earlier this morning. It's sort of a follow-up to Mekhail Sherman, and the only way I know how is, one of the things I do, Brandon, is I try to. We say this a lot. We try to define these young men as young men and not just star ratings and heights and weights. And I asked Mekhail a simple question. I said, "Why didn't you play football?" And his answer, Brandon, was 700 words. There were very few pauses. There were very few you-knows. I think he stopped once in the span of about a hiccup to take a breath, and he had a 700-word answer. It took about 4 minutes of interview time for him to answer just that one question. And then he came back to it a little bit later, wanting to add things about his community and trying to do more for the village, around Baltimore, the area around Baltimore where he came up in. I can say this, Brandon. I've been doing this a long time. I've asked that question out of a lot of young men. It's one of the questions I use when I try to do a really good profile on these dudes. And I don't know if I've ever heard an answer quite like that.
So you mentioned DawgNation.com. Coming up later on, before I let you go, I want to make sure folks are aware of something really cool that's going to happen today on DawgNation.com. I want you to tell us about that. But let me stay on the topic of Mekhail Sherman here just for a moment, because a moment ago you said that you think that Sherman, I'm going to use your words, looks like he's going to be the clear, outspoken leader for this 2020 class. And making it official the way that he does on this Thursday night this week, I think sets the stage for him to be able to do that. And obviously, Jeff, you know how the conversation with Georgia fans goes. There's this curiosity of, okay, well, what's going to happen next? What's going to happen? I mean, by next, I mean within the sphere of Mekhail Sherman. Who is Sherman going to have sway and influence over? For instance, if you look at the Sherman Twitter feed, it's hard not to notice the occasional interactions with guys like Keely Ringo and Kendall Milton. Those guys don't live close to Sherman. They're on the other end of the North American landmass. However, these guys kind of travel around a good bit, and they hang out on visits like the ones they've taken to Georgia. How influential do you think Sherman can be with a lot of these big, bold print names that you and I talk about every time we get together?
I think he can be very influential. I think he has already been very influential. Like we kind of thought on the DawgNation forum, that I've kind of thought that one of the most outspoken leaders of the class wasn't even a public commitment yet, and that was that was definitely Sherman who fits that bill. I would watch a couple things very closely, Brandon. I would watch if Mr. Sherman decides to come to that scavenger hunt on the May 17th, 18th weekend, and if he is also able to see other luminaries like Jacoby Cowan, Ely Ringo, maybe even a Kendall Milton, if those names all start lining up for the scavenger hunt event, I think that's going to make Brandon Adams and a lot of DawgNation very happy about the possibilities of glass building and relationship building going forward. And, Brandon, I know a lot of people are kind of wondering, when is it going to be happening, or when's the dam going to burst, and when Georgia is going to get some of those LSU-sized or Clemson-sized runs to their recruiting class. And I think Sherman might just be the momentum pill for some of this to happen. And you, sir, if it all comes to fruition, it might take a little longer for some of the names, because there's some of the guys that are going to take a little bit longer to weed out their decision. But I'm sure you would like to be faced with the problem of when you put your show together with our crack DawgNation staff every morning, you're like, well, I would really like to do something that pokes fun at that rival fan base, but I got all these commitments to talk about. So do I have to bury another poking fun bit because we've got all these commitments to discuss at the top of the show? I think you may may need to start thinking about what you would do in that situation.
Yes, yeah, I think we'll find a way to juggle all those scenarios that would indeed happen. That would be a pretty good problem to have. By the way, speaking of the rival fan base for a moment, indulge me if you will, and I want to get more in detail on Steele in a moment with you, but obviously the Mekhail Sherman announcement does come really just hours after Florida loses its top 2019 signing, the cornerback Chris Steele, entering the transfer portal. He can come back. I don't think many people think that he will, though. Do you think in any universe possible, this is more your opinion than any kind of reporting you've done, I'm assuming anyway, do you think in any way possible that this was an intentional act on Georgia's part to push the Sherman button as a way of, as I said on Twitter last night, dunking on Florida and then hanging on the rim with Sherman in the fold? Was this just a coincidence, or is there a chance of, hey, I'm going to get a measure of retribution for all the dumb stuff Dan Mullen's been saying?
I would say it's probably, given the nature of things here, I would say that probably nobody's ever going to hesitate when a commitment is ready to commit to the University of Georgia. I don't think the staff will ever tell them to pump the brakes on that one. And I don't know, Brendan, a lot of people had fun with your comment about dunking. They went with it on Twitter, and they had the Dave Chappelle sketch of Prince dunking, and
one of the better ones, if you ask me. Yeah, that's pretty funny.
That one gave me like a Brandon Adams sized chuckle when I saw that one. But here's the thing. I don't know. I want to know your true answer to this one.
Okay.
Is it better that maybe this was planned and this was like you said, a dunk and hanging on the rim by the Georgia staff? The day they lose one, Georgia picks up another one? Or would you rather the answer be Georgia really doesn't care what happens to Florida? It just operates on its own cycle and goes about winning each day and attacking each day in its own way, no matter what the Gators do. I would wonder which answer would be better for you.
That's a really good question, Jeff, because generally speaking, I do like the idea of Georgia and Kirby Smart in particular operating on an orbit outside of what Dan Mullen and Florida have been doing, because it is so Bush League. It's so beneath the dignity of kind of a true SEC coach with like legit gravitas, the way that Kirby Smart has that. What Mullen does is so beneath that standard that you don't want to see Kirby Smart kind of swim in those waters. However, pretty good level of retribution for the 39,000 spring game comment and the weird comment that seemed to address Justin Fields and all that kind of stuff, is saying you lose 5-star recruits, we use 5-star recruits, and we just added another one. And I think that's kind of a cool thing to see. But I think that's a really good question, Jeff. I want to get more into the Steele thing in a minute, because I'm going to ask you the $64,000 question about that, which I'm sure you anticipate. Let me talk about a different recruit before we get there. Monday, also a big day on the other side of the ball, as another one or the other decision is going to get made. Now, Mekhail Sherman chose Georgia over just Ohio State last night. He was down to 2. And 4-star offensive tackle Tate Ratledge is also down to 2. It's Georgia versus Tennessee. This one, at least on paper, may be a little harder for the Dogs, because as you've reported at DawgNation.com, Ratledge's dad's a Tennessee fan. Geographically, Athens is not a huge advantage. It's probably about equally distant from Knoxville to Athens from his home there in the Rome area. It's Monday morning for Tate Ratledge. Any kind of preview of that you can offer up to us?
It's going to be at Darlington High. It's going to be in the 9 o'clock hour. Fox 5 has secured that decision during it will be during their Good Day Atlanta program with Tate Ratledge. And if you look at the 2020 Tennessee class, and I think it's best to just let numbers talk here. Currently, Tennessee's 2020 class is rated number 30 in the country. Marietta quarterback Harrison Bailey, who I really like as a football player, especially a tough, field-minded leader, a guy that can get the ball out. He is their highest-rated commitment. Tennessee has 3 4-star commits. They don't have an offensive tackle commitment yet. So you're really talking about Georgia, Tennessee, which way both of those programs are heading. And Tennessee really loaded up, in my opinion, with tackles in the last class. They got a couple of names that DawgNation was very familiar with. One of them is obviously Wanye Morris out of Grayson High School. They got another 5-star tackle as well. And I think there's a unique, just simple compare-contrast, not where the one-loss trajectory of the last couple of years are for Georgia compared to Tennessee. But, Tennessee also added Darnell Wright, another 5-star tackle a year ago. Georgia's set to lose a pair of 5-star tackles, potentially, not 5-star tackles, let me back that up, but starting offensive tackles, all SEC caliber tackles.
I think you mean a 5-star and a guy that should have been a 5-star. I think that's what you mean, right, when it comes to Andrew Thomas?
Yeah, I think those guys are so good they don't even need to have the star rating attached to their name anymore. I think you should probably just say NFL draft candidate or NFL draft target or all SEC candidate, all American candidate.
Yeah, that's about
it. I think that's probably you probably need to kind of untether them from their former star ratings because those guys are definitely worth all the hype that they had coming in.
How about Outland Trophy winner?
There you go, top 5 draft pick candidate. I think that's the way you look at that decision. There's the pull of Tennessee. There's, the Tennessee hometown stuff, how he grew up a Tennessee fan versus what he simply thinks will be the best thing for his decision. And, of course, this is another situation. I think we spoke about that on Hedges a while back, maybe our last program on our Before the Hedges, where we talked about 2 guys that have went radio silent, 2 guys that are down to the 2 teams, 2 very big targets for Georgia in the 2020 class. And this is a guy that Sam Pittman has made a priority for the Bulldogs over the last couple of years. Actually, he's been recruiting him, and I just want to think that that's something that Georgia fans there they've kind of seen how this storyline goes with Tate Ratledge. So it would be a true shocker right now, considering what's going on there with Georgia's recruiting class and current momentum. I would say most in the industry would label it as a surprise. If Tate pulls a shocker on Monday. But hey, these young men are young men, and that's why 17 and 18-year-olds maybe change their minds a lot. Maybe they want to do the things that make up their decision and not anyone else's decision as well. So that's another big target coming up on Monday for the Georgia Bulldogs, and he is down to Tennessee and Georgia.
Sounds good to think about that. Obviously, DawgNation, I have coverage all morning on Monday as Tate Ratledge gets ready to make his choice. It sounds like Dog fans are going to be listening very closely to see what Mr. Ratledge decides to do. Jeff, here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Kroger, before I get one more thing from you on what's going to be on the website today, let me kind of ask, as I kind of jokingly said before, what might be the $64,000 question. It might just be wishful thinking on my part, but one does pretty quickly notice that the 5-star cornerback Chris Steele, upon entering his name reportedly in the transfer portal, was brought to Florida by the now departed defensive backs coach Charlton Warren. And Jeff, as you are certainly aware, and our audience, many are aware of as well, Charlton Warren now resides in Athens, Georgia as defensive backs coach. So I'm assuming that Warren still has Steele's cell phone number. Any chance that Steele's new home might include a look at UGA, or is it just too early to know?
Wow, Brennan. So what would be greater than dunking and hanging on the rim? Would that be dunking, hanging on the rim, taking the ball, and putting it up on a trophy case? Would that be the ultimate right there between Georgia and Florida? I think it's really too early. I think Charlton Warren at Georgia is a help here, and I don't even know. I haven't even explored. Steele was thinking about Georgia, but it never really got too close with Georgia in the final days of his commitment journey and his process. Maybe my first reaction to that question is would Georgia adding this is a true hypothetical here, but with Georgia adding Steele or any school adding Steele, what does that mean in the SEC with a release from Florida? When would he become eligible? If Steele is a candidate for Georgia, which I'm not going to say yet if he is or not, but how would that affect how some 2020 elite recruits look at Georgia?
Yeah, good point. Good point.
Like a Keely Ringo.
Yep.
I've expressed my opinion about Keely Ringo a lot on our platforms, Brandon, and I think wherever Chris Steele was rated, he wasn't going to be rated higher than Keely Ringo in any year. I think Keely Ringo is the highest rated and the best pure cornerback prospect that Georgia has recruited in Kirby Smart's time. So I wouldn't wonder too much about. I would wonder about whether Georgia secured Steele, if that might maybe help Texas's pitch there with Keely Ringo, or Keely Ringo is also the type of young man that's going to compete and doesn't care who's on the field with him as well. So that's one of the things. I think we can wait on the Steele story just a little bit. I think he'll probably think more maybe something West Coast ties. You hear the name Oregon as they look there, and at one time he was committed to Southern Cal as well. So
Can I ask you a question about that? I don't mean to cut you off, but I do want to ask you a question about that part of this too, if you don't mind, because I always talk about, and you and I have been around and around about this, that guys from this part of the country, when they go out west to an Oregon or a USC, I always somewhat half seriously and half kiddingly say they're not going to be happy. They're going to come back this way before their college career's done. It may not be to Georgia, but they're coming back south before things are all said and done. When you see a guy like Chris Steele, and I know this situation's somewhat complicated for reasons I'll get into a little later on in our program today, but when you see a California kid come to Florida, last for a couple of minutes, and head back, is this an example of that door swinging both ways, that the West Coast kids are also going to get pretty homesick when they're 3,000 miles away on the East Coast? This is, after all, Jeff, as you know, relevant for Georgia because Ringo, who they're chasing down for 2020, is from Arizona. Kendall Milton, who they're chasing down, is from California. A lot of Darnell Washington from Las Vegas. A lot of West Coast guys on Georgia's wish list for 2020. Does anything about Steele not sticking at Florida make you worry about homesick that far away?
Yeah, Brandon, I don't know. My initial reaction to that is maybe you might be making a little bit too much out of this. I just see with Steele, it would be like the way any college freshman would be calling back home to the parents. If we look at what's been reported with Chris Steele's timeline at Georgia, he had a situation with a roommate he wasn't happy with. He wanted to be moved away from that room assignment. And there's some allegations about what happened with his roommate. That roommate has already left the Florida program.
Yep.
So that, to me, does not seem like the Florida house is properly in order, which is a unique situation that would cause any recruit to wonder, why exactly am I here? Why did I come here? Why did I make this move? Obviously, Charlton Warren was a guy that recruited him to Florida and helped get him to Florida. And he just decommitted from USC, I think, in October of his senior year. He took official visits to South Carolina, I believe, to Florida. If you really want to get into the conspiracy theory and where that portal may lead for Chris Steele, his St. John Bosco teammate, DJ Ungale, is committed to Clemson. And what's the storyline for the summer? Clemson getting everybody at once. That would be very interesting if a school like Clemson were to get involved with Chris Steele as well. Besides just the pure move back home, want to go back home, things like that. So I think Chris Steele. Let's remember this, Brandon. I mean, he was a very good prospect, but he'd lost his 5-star rating on the composite. I think he ended up being a 4-star prospect, right around the nation's number 5 cornerback last year. So I think very clearly what Georgia landed in Tyreek Stevenson last year. Georgia made the choice that they wanted to be in the Tyreek Stevenson chase all in rather than the Chris Steele chase all in. So I think Georgia ended up with a better player there anyway last year than what the Gators got in their big-time quarterback.
All right, before we let you go, I have been told that you've got something major on the DawgNation.com today, the DawgNation video channels today. This sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun. Is there any details that you can give us? Because obviously Georgia fans are lapping up recruiting news right now. Sounds like you may have some more coming.
Yeah, I just thought this was going to be a good time for maybe in the month of May for Georgia to get really busy with recruiting. And one of the things that happened in early March is Carson Beck committed to Georgia. That was the quarterback, the future quarterback of the Georgia Bulldogs. I'm actually in Jacksonville. I think I tweeted something out yesterday. I was at practice yesterday at Mandarin High School watching Carson Beck work out. And this is a kind of a tentative thing, but I want folks to kind of maybe pay attention to my Twitter feed and the DawgNation Twitter feed, because we're going to try, like we always do with a lot of commitments at Georgia, we're going to try and sit him down, and we're going to fire up that Facebook Live feed, and I'm going to talk to him and ask those simple reporter things for about 3 or 4 minutes, and then I'm going to turn Carson over to the Georgia fans on the DawgNation Facebook Live channel, and you guys can ask him questions for about 15 minutes. I think it's probably going to go down somewhere around 2:30, 2:45 today, right. Something like that.
Wow.
We will do it from Mandarin High School in Jacksonville. Carson, also about 6'4.5", looks like he's about 215, 220. Got a chance to visit with him and a lot of folks close to him yesterday, and we'll do the same because he'll have a scrimmage tonight at Mandarin High School as well. So DawgNation will kind of be embedded on the Carson Beck beat for a couple of days. And usually when someone commits, Brandon, I usually get out and we share their stories and really let the fans talk to them a little bit quicker than we have so far from March. But this just felt like a good time to get down to Jacksonville and do it, and kind of do it around the backdrop of his spring practices so we can get a good look at what all he brings to the table. And we'll have a lot of Carson Beck stuff coming up over the next few days on DawgNation.com.
That is going to be fun, a chance to catch up with Carson Beck. Look forward to seeing that later on this afternoon. Jeff, thanks so much for being with us on DawgNation Daily, presented by Kroger today. Good coverage of the Mekhail Sherman decision last night. Good stuff coming up this weekend, it sounds like, with Carson Beck. Boy, this 2020 class is getting fun. A lot of these big names are certainly making it be all the more fun, and your coverage of those guys helps us know them better. So appreciate you being with us. We'll look forward to catching your coverage over the weekend, including this afternoon with Carson Beck, and then we'll talk to you again soon.
Hey, Brandon, go have fun hanging on the rib, ribbing those swamp lizards in the rest of your show, sir.
I'll do just that.
Let's take a look around the rest of the league. This is SEC Through.
Yeah, I mean, I have to admit, there's nothing better than the thorough domination that Georgia has shown over Florida over the last 24 hours. I do like that. I like the fact that so many of you like that. And, well, it's just it's a pretty good time. Obviously, one of the things that we've kind of reacted to throughout the program today is the fact that Chris Steele, the top signee for Florida's 2019 class, has put himself reportedly in the transfer portal. We'll do more on that coming up in a moment. Let me also remind you that something at DawgNation.com right now that you want to go and find more information about our DawgNation Days of Summer. We're going to be Thursday, June 13th at Callaway Resort and Gardens in Pine Mountain, Georgia. This is an awesome place, and we're going to have a terrific event there that night. The event starts at 6 p.m., but there's also a chance for you to be a part of the kind of the VIP hour before that, and that means be one of the first 20 to book your room, and rooms are going fast, so get in there and be a part of it. I'm so excited this event's going to be as big as I kind of envision it being, and based on the early feedback that I'm getting, many of you are really excited about it too. So if you're looking for just kind of a fun hangout, summer getaway, we're going to enjoy a lot of the golf and the lake and all the stuff they got there at Callaway, and then we'll do the same thing at the beginning of August at Brasstown Valley Resort and Spa. Please just go to DawgNation.com to find out more about that, but also register for your chance to win a VIP stay giveaway courtesy of Callaway Resort and Gardens. Of course, don't wait to book to see if you won, because if you wait, you may miss out on the VIP opportunity. So book your room, and if you win, we'll just comp that for you later on. But get in, be a part of DawgNation Days of Summer. It's going to be a ton of fun. All right, here is the news that kind of happened. And I know 2 nights ago, Twitter was on fire about this all night long, and I was obviously watching it. But the same way that I'm sometimes skeptical of the UGA rumors that pop up, I'm also skeptical of the UGA rival rumors that pop up, because let's face it, just because we want it to be true doesn't mean it's going to be true. And a lot of Georgia fans were hearing about all this panic setting in Gainesville. There was fear of doom and gloom for the 2020 class. We don't know how much of that's going to happen, but we do know that the one rumor that kind of kept popping up over and over again, I guess, has turned out to be true. As Matt Zenitz from AL.com had reported that Chris Steele, the 2019 top signee for Florida, did put his name in the transfer portal, and that kind of became official because of Zenitz yesterday and what Zenitz kind of put out there on social media. Now, obviously, this is a lot of fun for Georgia fans. We laugh about that. And yeah, if you're watching a video, you see Zenitz right there. We laugh about all this kind of stuff. But there is a more serious part of this, because what you did not see from Zenitz in his initial tweet from AL.com is kind of more of the reasoning about why this might have happened. Now, I'll admit, my job is to give opinions on the news, and I'm a little skeptical of the current narrative that seems to exist around Steele and why he left Florida. Zach Abolverdi is a terrific reporter and a guy that I consider to be a friend. He put out some information from his reporting based on what may have happened with Steele, and Zach put this out at Gatorsports.com, and I guess the story behind the story from Zach on all of this is that Steele wanted his room assignment changed. Dan Mullen was either slow to act or just rejected the notion on acting on that, did not want to give or was slow to want to give Chris Steele a new room, and so Steele put his name in the transfer portal. Zach Abolverdi reports that for Gatorsports.com. Now, why would Chris Steele have wanted a new room? Why would he not have wanted to stay living where he was living? Well, you have to go to a different report to maybe get some more information on that. This is speculation, but it seems easy to assume that one of the reasons why Steele wanted out of the room that he was living in is because that he was living with Jalen Jones, who's now been accused of sexual assault, and in the police report stemming from that accusation, Chris Steele's name actually gets mentioned. Let me give you a couple sentences from Matt Baker from the Tampa Bay Times. Now, I'll apologize. This is a little graphic in nature and probably a little more serious than we normally do around here, but it is part of the context of this story. What Baker wrote earlier this month at Tampa Bay Times website, the Florida blue-chip quarterback Jalen Jones was accused of sexual battery by two different women in separate instances a half an hour apart last month, according to police reports. Now listen to this. The first incident began consensually around 2 a.m. on April 6th, a female Florida student told police. But when two Gators freshman defensive backs, this is information obtained from the police report, according to the Tampa Bay Times, when two Gators freshman defensive backs, Chris Steele, that's the guy that just put his name in the transfer portal, and Jaden Hill entered the room and began laughing, the woman told Jones to stop, according to the police report. That's Matt Baker from the Tampa Bay Times. So it seems easy to assume that one of the reasons, or maybe the reason, that Steele and his family wanted out of Florida is because living with Jalen Jones, who's been accused of sexual assault, Steele's name pops up in this police report, and then the media reports kind of connect him to this crime. That can be kind of a scary situation. There's a nature of this involving Steele that feels a little too clean, neat, and tidy, that he's leaving Florida simply because Dan Mullen wouldn't change his room assignment. Maybe this is just that big of a blunder for Dan Mullen, but something about this feels like an unclosed loop, a story that we're probably going to gain more information on. But no doubt it was not a pleasant sight for the Steele family to have his name come up in this police report here, and stemming from the situation from Jalen Jones, who is now in the transfer portal. This is the part where it's not funny. We like making fun of Dan Mullen. This is the part that's probably not so funny. It is a pretty big mess for Florida to clean up right now, with two of its 2019 signees in the transfer portal, and one of them apparently facing some, not so much, I guess, criminal charges, because it sounds like the gals here are not going to do that, but certainly an accusation and a police report and investigation. Kind of an ugly situation. And so we'll see where that goes next for Florida and make that your SEC through. And here today on DawgNation Daily, presented by Kroger, the Friday program for us is always the time to kick off the weekend. And around here, we love the weekend, and we love thinking about Kroger for the weekend, because many of you got your cookouts going on this weekend. You got the Mother's Day brunches and kind of everything else in between. I know a lot of you are thinking about that. Well, Kroger's the place to go to kind of get ready for all of that. And so as you kick off the weekend in Kroger, let's also think about the weekend for UG Athletics as well, because it is a busy one once again. Let me give you a couple of the updates here. First of all, Diamond Dogs starting tonight. Big SEC series on the road at Auburn. You know the story for this team by now if you've been following it. Georgia got back to its winning ways in SEC play last weekend with lowly Florida after struggling at Mississippi State the weekend before that. Georgia did lose a midweek game this week to Jacksonville State. That's not a big deal one way or another. But in the pursuit of this top national seed, a chance to host postseason series, big play to close out the regular season. The weekend in SEC play is going to be crucial on the road at Auburn. It's a pretty big series for the Diamond Dogs, I would suggest, and there is some good news involved with this. The star pitcher, Emerson Hancock, as I guess 960 The Ref reported first this week, Hancock going to pitch on Saturday for the Diamond Dogs after missing his last two starts. Hancock going to get a chance to hurl for the Dogs on Saturday. It's Tony Losey tonight, I think, and then Sunday they are still going to, I guess, figure out what they're doing with their Sunday starters. So Dogs try to go after Auburn on the road tonight. We'll pay close attention to that. Then it's the track and field at the SEC Outdoor Championships all weekend long. By the way, speaking of the track and field, make sure you check out a really good piece with Chip Towers at DawgNation.com, who caught up with Elijah Godwin, the sprinter involved in the scary, scary incident with the javelin earlier this week. That story has been around. Many of you have seen that. The aftermath of that, Chip had a chance to speak with Godwin, and the good news is it looks like he's going to have a full recovery, and it seems like he's in pretty good spirits after a really scary situation. So good reporting by Chip to catch up with Godwin, and an unbelievable answered prayer that this scenario with Godwin did not turn out to be more serious than it is. Could have, as you all know, as Godwin himself is very well aware of, could have lost his life. That's not the case. So he is going to be expecting a full recovery. You can check out more of that at DawgNation.com. Then the men's golf team, NCAA regionals for them start Monday. So best of luck to the men's golf team as they head towards the NCAA tournament next week as well. So it's our Kroger kickoff here on DawgNation Daily presented by Kroger. Looking forward to the weekend and looking forward to spending some of that time at Kroger. And when I go to Kroger, one of the things that I'm thinking about is the thing that my family loves. And I've told you this before. My kids like real milk. I'm talking about dairy milk from Georgia cows. Kroger, a huge supporter of local Georgia agriculture. It's one of the things I like about Kroger. Walking the aisles there, you look around on the shelves, and you know a lot of those products came from many of your neighbors who have made money and made their living in agriculture for a long time in the state of Georgia. And the dairy cow, the dairy industry is another big part of that. I think it's good for you. I think it tastes good. It's a big part of what we do. And you can go to Kroger and get your real dairy milk coming from those Georgia cows, and you can know that you're not only supporting a great industry, but you're also drinking something that tastes good, and it's awful good for you as well. All right, we're going to do our R.S. Andrews cool down in just a couple of minutes for our video audience. And for our audio audience, I'd love to have you reach out to me on Twitter at DawgNation Daily. You can kind of give me your thoughts and everything as it stands for the Mekhail Sherman news. Appreciate all of you who joined us last night on the DawgNation Facebook page. Going to do that as I kind of impromptu hopped on there and had that chat, that conversation. So if you're listening radio podcast, reach out to me on Twitter at DawgNation Daily. Video audience will take some of your comments in just a moment. But before that, we got some business to take care of. So around here, we have been Gator haters for a long time. As I've said before, we were Gator hating before Gator hating was cool. And, well, it's never been more fashionable than it is right now. When Florida's losing its top signee and Georgia's adding 5-star commits, just a pretty good contrast and a pretty fun time to be a Dog fan. And the smiles on faces last night as Sherman was in the fold and now holding out hope that Monday morning will bring good news with Tate Ratledge. And then who knows, the momentum of those two decisions might carry into the future as Georgia puts even more distance between itself and the Florida Gators right now. And speaking of that, the distance grows by numbers each and every day, 923. That is now how many days that it has been since those lousy, stinking Gators have beaten the Georgia Bulldogs. Boy, that's great, great news. We appreciate you being with us here today on DawgNation Daily, presented by Kroger. We hope you are getting ready for a great weekend. Happy Mother's Day to all the moms who are listening right now. Y'all enjoy yourself. We'll see you back here again on Monday. And on video, time now for our R.S. Andrews cool down as we take your questions and comments, as many as we can. I do have to be a little bit quick today because I got a meeting I got to go to in a couple of minutes. So let me tell you, first of all, air, heating, plumbing, electric. My friends at R.S. Andrews, they are the true utility player around DawgNation. They're the ones we trust to play all those positions, and they'll play them well for you as well. So please check them out online at rsandrews.com. On YouTube here first, we'll kind of rock and roll there for a minute. And like I said, y'all, I got to kind of bounce in and bounce out pretty quick today. So let me apologize in advance for being rude. And for those of you who watched on video last night, sorry that kind of ended abruptly. I almost ran out of battery again on my cell phone. I got to start working on my cell phone battery situation. It's probably not always a great situation. Dennis Wilson says, "BA, you better stop Gator hating because Notre Dame should upset Georgia." Yeah, I don't know about that, Dennis. I don't know about that. Right now, Georgia's about a 12-point favorite. I like Georgia by at least that much. At least that much. Jacob Thompson says I should have brought my clock. So I guess I never thought about last night. I'm on the video on our mantle that we have like a big clock, and it's like part of the reason I have a big clock is what else you gonna put there. So you're just gonna put the big clock there. It's kind of, I don't know, like a decoration or whatever. But people seem to got a kick out of how big the clock is on my my fireplace mantle. So I'm glad you were all able to see inside my humble home last night. Some of y'all are trying to switch G. Grace over to the Georgia side of things. Boy, that'd be, you're talking about an amazing. We do an altar call one day at the end of the show, start converting some of these fans. That'd be pretty impressive right there. I'd be all for that. That'd be a lot of fun. A lot of fun to see G. Grace come on board to the Georgia side of things. Let me see if I can get going on the Facebook comments here too for a minute. Let me pop in here. Hope y'all are, by the way, getting ready for good weekends. Wish my mother happy Mother's Day earlier. Wish all of you all who are moms happy Mother's Day to you. And for those of you who have mothers, wish you one as well. All right, let me see if we can get a few of the Facebook comments here. Winston Mock says the BA After Dark show is cool, especially the OG Gator Hater Clock. Yeah, that's nice to hear. Thanks so much. Appreciate that. Jacob McMillan laughing about the altar call thing. Galen Jacob says the BA Estates is what I'd like to call that home. Yeah, I don't know about estates. I don't know if I quite qualify as that. In my humble abode. Mark Gofford says, where's the hat hair at today, BA? Yeah, no hat hair for me today. Freshly cut, by the way. Thank you all for not mocking me too much, because I was a little late getting a haircut last week. I was supposed to get one, wasn't able to go. And so the hair had gotten a little long on the sides, but I got a fresh cut today. It was kind of nice to wear the hat last night on video, because I at first when I was about to go live, I was going to like have my regular like pajamas that I always wear. And by pajamas, I mean just the stuff over in the house. To be honest with you, it was a Braves bobblehead T-shirt is what it was. That's pretty much what I wear as pajamas pretty much every night. And Philip Jordan Wells said the clock was like a Flavor Flav clock. That's actually pretty funny, Philip. And believe it or not, I actually get that hip hop reference. So those of you who had money wagered on that would have probably lost. But yeah, so at first I was going to, kind of go, kind of come as you are for the video. And I was like, let me at least throw on a hat or a pullover or something and kind of pull myself together here a little bit, kind of clean things up. After all, kind of the BA After Dark is a little rough looking sometimes, a little rough looking. Will Puckett said Matt Jones is back to calling out DawgNation folks on Feinbaum again. First of all, I can't believe he's still doing that. I think it just goes to show you that when you're like, Kentucky's a small state, Lexington, small market, DawgNation World Headquarters right here in Atlanta. This is major market stuff. This is big city media. And I think if you're a guy like Matt Jones, you're always kind of looking to see, will my act play in a big city? Let me go on Feinbaum. Let me see if I can stir up folks in the big city and see if what works for small town Kentucky radio also works in the big city. That's a natural thing to want to try to do, and that seems to be what Matt's trying to do there. And I don't fault him for it. I guess if I was working in Kentucky, I'd be trying to work my way up too. So I hope it works for him. I think that's great. Matt Rukavina, by the way, says, BA, I called it last week. Sherman, Gilbert, Milton, Ringo. 1 down, 3 to go. Boy, I like the idea of that. And, by the way, Matt, on that same subject here for a moment, how much do you love the fact that Jeff gave us a pretty strong opinion a moment ago, and I hope you heard this, that I was kind of jokingly asking him, because I know many of you have asked me, given the connection to Charlton Warren, is there a chance Chris Steele would consider Georgia? And I actually like Jeff's opinion on this. He says, listen, even if Georgia could get Chris Steele, I don't believe he's better than Keely Ringo. Now, I don't know. That's Jeff's opinion. It's not, that's not my opinion. It's not really for me to say one way or another. But the fact that Jeff didn't hesitate to say that, I put a lot of value and stock in that. It sounds like Jeff says between the two players, he thinks Ringo is better anyway. Now, I don't know. I don't know if that means, Georgia's definitely going to get Ringo. It's probably a pretty tough battle with Texas for him, but pretty strong opinion from Jeff on that. Sonia Prescott says BA is full of it today. Yeah. Sonia, I guess most people would say I'm probably pretty full of it most every day. Randy Hall says the big clock in my house is a symbol to say time's running out for Mullen. I like that. It's pretty good. I like that. Jennifer Caldwell Sperlin, also on the subject of Steele. Jeff mentioned Clemson as a possibility there. I don't know. I mean, at some point in time, as much as I don't want Florida to get recruits, and I don't know that Steele would go to Clemson, but let's just say hypothetically for a second he did. As much as I don't want Florida to get recruits, there gets to be a point where Florida's inability to recruit becomes a problem for Georgia, because all of this stuff is kind of a butterfly effect, right? And when Florida doesn't get a Darius Bowman, when it loses Chris Steele, and when it loses all these guys, one way or another they end up playing somewhere else, and they're making other teams that Georgia needs to play more talented. So I don't want these guys to be at Florida, but if Florida doesn't sign any of these guys or hold on to the ones they do sign, they're going to just migrate to somewhere else and be a problem for Georgia somewhere else in some cases. So in a weird roundabout way, Florida's inability to attract and maintain talent is actually going to end up being a source of frustration for the Georgia Bulldogs. So there you go. Randy Hall says Tate Ratledge is next. Boy, these Facebook comments are kind of hard to navigate today. I'm not using my normal computer, so it's a little hard. But yeah, somebody said Tate Ratledge is next, and on Monday, that's what folks are hoping for. It sounds like, based on what Jeff Sentell said there's some pretty good reason for optimism. That's good enough for me, so I'm going to keep a good thought for Monday morning. I'll invite many of you to be with us for our coverage of that. Back over here on YouTube just for a moment. Groon D says Clemson's class is scary good, and yeah, they've done a good job in recruiting. You can't fault them for that. I mean, I'm going to take jabs at them for a lot of different things, but in terms of their ability to build a roster, they have definitely done it. Definitely done it. Cliff Payne, on the subject of Auburn, says the key is going to be if Auburn finds a quarterback. If they can, it's going to be a beatdown. And the one thing that, Cliff, I've been saying about that is that by the time Georgia plays Auburn in November, they may have very well found their quarterback, because odds are Bo Nix is the most talented quarterback on that roster. Joey Gatewood and Nix are the two guys that are currently competing for that job. I don't think there's any way that Gatewood holds off Nix forever. He may be the starter against Oregon week 1. He may be the guy that kind of goes through some of the early portion of the season, but eventually that's going to be Bo Nix's job. And so this is an example, ironically, where if Georgia was playing Auburn in October the way they're going to in 2020, that's actually an easier game to win. Playing Auburn in November this year, now I still think Georgia will probably win it, but I've told you before, I think that's Georgia's scariest regular season game. I don't believe it's close with any other contest. And one of the things that makes that game a little tougher for Georgia is by November, late November especially, mid-November, you're going to have probably a freshman quarterback in Bo Nix who feels a little more comfortable there. And, 2019 was kind of a weird year for quarterbacks. I don't know that there was really any great quarterback in the country a year ago. So guys like Helinski at South Carolina and Nix at Auburn, they end up probably faring a little better in terms of their perception, just due to the fact that you weren't comparing them to a Trevor Lawrence or a Justin Fields or a Jake Fromm or a Tua Tagovailoa. You weren't making that kind of comparison with any of the 2019 quarterbacks to somebody who's truly spectacular. So they're all, from a reputation standpoint, somewhat enhanced. And yet, even that said, Nix is probably still a pretty good signal caller and somebody that could at least make Auburn a little more dangerous. I got to get off the air here in just a minute, y'all. So, Connor, if you want to say anything, pop on in here, say it for a second, because I got a meeting I got to go to in a minute. I don't even know that Connor hears me. Maybe Connor's just asleep today. He's about to miss his chance to talk on the show, though. Miriam Martin Corbin talking about being not just a top band, but a hyper top band. Oh, Miriam, please don't get more levels of hierarchy started and established. That's the last thing we need. Sowing discourse. John Anthony says the Centel crystal ball. Yeah, Jeff, he gave us, I don't want to say he gave us a true prediction on Ratledge, but he gave a pretty strong statement on that a moment ago. Kennard Chapman, does mention that when it comes to inexperienced quarterbacks, I was talking about Bo Nix at Auburn a moment ago. He says Fromm took his team to the championship without experience, and Fromm's a really good example of what I was talking about. Now, I believe it absolutely remains to be seen if Bo Nix is the kind of quarterback that Jake Fromm was in 2017. Fromm made that look easier than it actually is, but the way that Fromm was way better late in the season than he was near the beginning of the season. Remember, think about Notre Dame, where he didn't make a mistake that killed you in that game at all, but that was not the same polished, comfortable, poised player it was even 2 weeks later. A little bit of experience goes a long way, and the version of Nix that Georgia probably sees in November is at least some version of that. I would say it's too much to say he's going to be as good as a freshman as Jake Fromm was, but the similar timeline where November's better than September was, that seems pretty reasonable to expect. Let me see if I can get Connor's attention again. Connor, you want to say anything? Because I got to get off the air in a second. Anything for you to add today?
Have a great weekend.
Wait, is that how you're giving me the have a great weekend?
Well,
you give me the salutation?
Just let me finish. Sunday is shaping up to be a great day, great Mother's Day. I know I myself am going to be making my mom breakfast and bag some eggs Benny back at home. Then you've got potentially 3 Game 7s in the NBA that day to go along with the penultimate episode of Game of Thrones. Very much looking forward to doing nothing at all on Sunday, except for celebrating my mom, of course.
Penultimate means next to last for those of you who weren't liberal arts majors.
Oh my! Are you kidding me? You're going after me for using big words?
I'm sorry. Kelly Burnett gives us a Milton. Yeah, listen, Kelly, I'd love for that to be the next one. But no, it's not going to be the next one because it looks like Ratledge may end up being that, assuming that's good news on Monday. But I'd love for Milton to be among the next. That wouldn't be so bad at all. All right, y'all. Apologize for the brief comment section today. We got to rock and roll, though. Hope you're getting ready to enjoy a great weekend. Make sure you check out Kroger for all your needs to get ready for big events and fun stuff. Hope you'll check that out. And, of course, I'll see you back here on Monday. But on my way out the door, let me also thank R.S. Andrews for bringing the R.S. Andrews Cool Down to you. Air, heating, plumbing, electric. You got a broken water heater or a busted AC unit, they're going to take good care of you. So check them out online at rsandrews.com. Y'all have a great day. We'll see you back here on Monday. Thanks for being a part today of DawgNation Daily, presented by Kroger and our R.S. Andrews Cool Down. We'll talk to you later on.